Welcome to the TRT show, the real talk show. So today I'm lucky and excited to have a chat with. We have Wayne Hart. How are you, Wayne?
Thanks, son.
Wayne has done what a lot of people will never achieve, a master's degree, and Wayne is an ex-armed robber. He's done about 16 years in Irish prisons combined, and today we're just going to have a chat with him about his life and where he finds himself now, the supportive role and his job of helping people.
Thanks, son.
No worries. So Wayne, you grew up, whereabouts did you grow up?
Well, originally born in the northeast inner city town. A lot of my family's still in there, and moved out to the Coolock area in the early 70s, 74 or something, 75, 74. But we played hurling for Lawrence O'Toole's. I know they're out here now, but even when I was playing up into the mid-teens, they were still based in Seville Place, just 500 beers into Sherwood Street. So I was never fully disconnected from town.
Yes.
And then I would have spent a lot of my summers in and around the Ballybock area with my grandfather and family, and that I used to go in. Met a lot of friends in there over the years as well, and then when I was 18 I was living back in Ballybock, what I mean. So you could nearly say like I'm 51 this year, so I was looking at it there a while ago, and it's like I've probably been like 20 odd years in each place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's the old thing, you can take the boy out of town, you can't take town out of the boy, we just have a connection with, especially the northeast in our city, you know what I mean? Even just having family there, and then like that, I got thrown out a lot of schools around here, and I ended up in the North Strand Tech. You know what I mean? So I was back in town again, even in my teens in school.
Yeah.
So
you see the way you say you ended up in the tech. Like I was saying to me, like my wife there a while ago, she's like, yeah, what school did you go to? I was like, what school didn't I go to? I just went to loads of schools, like 5 primary schools and 4 secondary schools, but I was out in a school out here in St. Fintan's or something. I was out there for 2 years. I like to travel around, but the teacher, headmaster, always used to threaten me with going, you'll end up in one of them techs. That's what he used to say. Yeah. You'll end up in a tech. Yeah. I don't know why they had that about the techs.
Yeah, it's because it was technical, you know what I mean? It was more around, the woodwork and metalwork and stuff like that. Which the skills kind of seemed to, like my father and all his brothers would have went to tech skills.
But them skills look down on techs.
Yeah, but I don't know why, because it's kind of, if you're coming through the normal process and going to college, it's all theory based and not a lot go on. Where if you go to a technical school, the chances of coming out and getting an apprenticeship and progressing and probably having the house by the time the other person has come through college.
Yes.
So I don't know why they actually look down on it, and I'd like to see it kind of balance out or revert back to that, you know what I mean? Because you have kids now going to college, costing families a lot of money. Some families haven't got it, you know what I mean? In order to get an apprenticeship in something where technical skills, you could basically nearly come out of a technical skill and go straight into an apprenticeship. So I don't know why they kind of look down, but needless to say, I didn't end up finishing that school either. But like that, I went to the North Strand Tech, so they actually used to call it the North Strand Tick.
Yeah.
So what happened in the 80s, especially with the North Strand Tech, was that when you were thrown out of other school, you might have moved around because you were living in different areas. I was actually, I don't know.
No, I lived in the same area.
I was thrown out of the kind of schools I was in, and like that, the North Strand Tech was the last stop, last chance at saloon. And I remember, because my dad and I went to the school and his brothers, I remember Mr. Lee turning around and saying to me, Dad, John, you'd have to burn this school down to be thrown out. Needless to say, I was thrown. I didn't burn the school down now, but I was thrown out. Yeah. I didn't finish. You know what I mean. So I left school with no education attainment. You know what I mean. And I'm highly dyslexic. I didn't find it out till my mid-40s, and explained a lot now from when I was younger. So my perception of stuff that went on in school, or questions to be asked, and I'd answer what I think the question was, and people would, what's going on about? And then the teachers used to be actually frustrated because they used to say to parents, he's intelligent, and we know he's intelligent, but we just couldn't grasp what was going on, or things turned out then like that. I'm highly dyslexic, so explained a lot, but years too late maybe. Well, it's never too late, is it? But years later,
Yeah, and like, so your options, we were talking earlier on, and I somewhat remember that era in Ireland, and it's a lot different to now. I was just kind of coming late 80s, early 90s. I remember my dad had a job. I remember my brother was coming to the end of his school, and there was nothing. Like, nothing. Now, as you said earlier on, you needed a leaving cert to pack a shelf. Like, that's the way it was. So there wasn't many options. There wasn't many options at all.
No, there was no kind of options, and I'd be laughing like at the last recession.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's not a recession. And I know people did struggle, and there was ways and means, more legal ways still of making money, there was still more opportunities, but like that, in the 80s, the recession of the 70s and 80s was bad, if you think about it. I mean, Ireland was classed as a third world country until the early 90s, until the kind of Celtic Tiger, and like that, my dad worked 3 jobs. Like he had his main job, and then he was going around collecting tellies and videos from Murphy's television rentals in Fingers and Ballymun and all, where areas people wouldn't go into to do. My dad would do it, and he was going around, and he was doing all the new blinds had come out at the time, and he was going around as a door-to-door salesman doing blinds. So my dad was doing 3 jobs just to try and keep us head above water, and like that. I remember looking for a job, and I was 14 or 15 at the time, and I got a job on a bread van. That was the only job I could get, what I mean, and like that, other people, friends and all our family members and all, like, they were looking for leaving cert to pack shelves and dunce. So if you hadn't got, as it was at the time, the inter-cert, if I hadn't got a group cert, which is gone now, so I'd no chance, you know what I mean, education wise, I'd no chance, you know what I mean, and that's not to say that the education system failed me. I was highly dyslexic, I didn't get on, I didn't feel comfortable in school, you've seen me TED Talk and stuff, so around the abuse and the rape and all that, and that was kind of co-signed by the education system at the time. The abusers would have been knee deep in the school, and so I never felt safe in school anyway. And I kind of carried that through, and I would have took everything then as a personal attack. All I was saying was I became hyper-vigilant, and I would see problems or stuff arising, and sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it would, but you were always on edge, so I didn't feel safe in the places I should have felt safe.
And that hyper-vigilance, it's a protection mechanism.
It's the
primal.
It's primal, it's, fight.
I'm going to get you for you get me.
Yeah, and as I said, like in my TED Talk, I say it, and in my first article, I remember, I'm getting a shiver here now, and I can just have that memory, stepping down off a train, off the platform in London, 15 years of age, on the run, and making the decision no one was ever going to hurt me again. And that just carried through, and I kind of realised fairly quick, because of the violence that was perpetrated on me, that violence became a statement of intent. Do you know what I mean? And the more violent I could be, the less people could hurt me. But I was terrified. It was fear. It was fear. I was terrified. I was afraid. I couldn't talk. I couldn't tell people, big men, boys don't cry, boys don't talk. all bullshit. Do you know what I mean? The most important thing that I have learned as I've got older, the biggest tool I'll ever have is my voice. In an appropriate manner, like, but talk. I realised I needed to talk. I needed to tell people what was going on with me. And sometimes it was hard to verbalise, even, especially with being dyslexic. You know, I can, like, I'm highly dyslexic. You know what I mean? So sometimes it can be hard to even verbalise stuff. I know what I want to say or where I want to go. And even in college, I've answered questions and I've handed them in a draft and I'd be like, "Geez, man, that's brilliant." So I'm not answering the question. I remember a few times driving home and ringing my wife, "I'm leaving," roaring and crying the phone, at the hand in 2 assignments, and they're saying the assignments are brilliant, but I'm not answering the question. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes it takes me a lot to work out what I'm actually seeing or hearing, you know, or what's written down or what's being asked of me. So I'm like a percolator. I do have to set up. I've learned now. I'll come back to you. Do you know what I mean? I'll ask questions and all, you know. So the thinking part of the brain kicks in, thankfully.
And that hypersensitivity then comes with the territory. You know what I mean? That insecurity, not feeling good enough, all the old stinking thinking rolls. It's always there, you know what I mean? But rolls to the...
Yeah, well, I remember, like, coming into recovery, like, and I had this very blurred vision of myself that I was useless, I was a scumbag, I was never going to amount to anything. I remember being told in school, like you were saying, you'd end up in a tech. They told me I'd end up in prison, right? They went wrong. And I remember someone saying to me, I used to kind of scribble, I'm no good at art and that, but sometimes I would do the things down and all. Someone said to me, "No, that's a sign of a waster." So with being hypervigilant and, you know, and that hypersensitive, that impacted on me, I ingrained that thought process. And I know, you know, that there's theories and stuff out there where people would say, and I've used this myself, but I'd be using it in a smart manner, you know. As human beings, we say things, we put things out. How you perceive or internalise, that's your own shit. That's not actually the case, because we can have impact on people just by our narrative, what we say, what we do, because we don't know. And like that, one of the questions in our step work, and the first step is, do you take everything as a personal attack? Fuck yeah. 100%. Don't now.
You know, go to the ground.
And look, I mean, if my mind was able to play in a wall there, I'd never be released. You know what I mean? But I'm not me thinking.
Yes.
You know, and I've come to realise that, you know, like that the primal stuff kicks in, and it overloads the thinking part of your brain, the two brains that we have. But now I've kind of managed to get that balance, and I've realised when I'm down here in the emotions, I'm a teddy bear.
Yes.
And I'm up here in my head, I'm a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And that's what I have to compromise with. My compromise is not with you or with someone I'm having the argument. My compromise is with this, it's with myself. And that's what brings the balance for me. Now, I don't always catch it. I'm human. I fall short. I fall short on a daily basis. But I can catch it quick, you know. I can catch it quick, you know.
And going back, so schooling, right? And you touched on it, and anyone listen to this, listen to Wayne's TED Talk. It's mind blowing. But so you started off, you're coming through the schools. What age did the abuse start?
Yes, 7.
The priest.
6, 7 to about 10.
Okay.
And I would have highlighted it. And there was 6 was in the area now. Turned out in the end it was closer to 40.
Right.
There was only 6 was that. I don't know whether we were strong enough, or I don't know what it was about the 6. But we spoke up, you know. 3 of them are dead, took their own lives.
Right.
That I know of.
Yes.
I ended up addiction, aggressive, fighting society, fighting the world. Ended up in prison for numerous sentences for years, and violent sentences as well. The other 2, I don't know. They moved out of the area. 3 of the families moved out of the area after it came to life, because like that, I couldn't walk down certain roads in my own area because the Catholic Church had some power in this country. Like, unbelievable. And I remember, and I kind of got closure of this in 2012 in the courts. Took me 32 years fighting to get justice.
Yeah.
I wasn't believed for 32 years until they were actually caught and stuff came to light, and so many more people came out then over the years. But I'm glad to see kind of, you know, the Catholic Church and the education system that hit it at the time. I'd say they were kind of like, oh, what do we do here? So it was a very slow process, you know, and it wasn't until, thank God for the guard, that I did end up having the next kind of interviews and stuff with that, you know, of a different area, different thinking, different training, you know, and he actually believed me, and he went hunting and this, that and do that, and then just around the same time these documentaries started coming out where they'd actually followed him, and he was found in Scotland and married with your woman had kids and stuff like that, and run the B&B, and he bailed out when they kind of got close to him, and then he'd done something over there, and then he was in Spain then after that, and then we kind of decided I wanted to kind of find him, because I used to have it in my head that if he ever got caught, he would probably go to Arbor Hill prison, and I would go out and I would do something just to get a sentence because of the previous and all I had. If I'd done something, it didn't matter what I'd done, I'd probably get a sentence. Or if I wasn't, I'd start abusing the guard or the judge in court. I was going into prison either way, and I was going to go in and I was going to get someone to, what we call letterboxing in prison, someone to put a fucking letter in the box and say Wayne Hart's going to get stabbed, he stays in this prison or something, or any prison he goes to, right? They'd get that move, and I'd have asked for
Arbor Hill.
I wouldn't have cared if I had to go around all the jails first to get to Arbor Hill. I was getting to Arbor Hill and he was getting it. This was the savagery that was going on in my head, and this was the thought process. And then I came to a point in my life where I was like, no, do you know what, this is having too much power over me. It's controlling me. It's even when I used to play hurling, the slither and all was him. You know what I mean? And I done, it was a focus, so it was kind of utilised it in a healthy way, but it also it wasn't healthy.
No, 100%.
So I got to a point where I was like, no, do you know what, this needs to be done right. So I kind of went about trying to find where he was, found where he was, told the guards where he was, the police went over, questioned him, he ended up getting arrested, he was brought back, and all kind of had started to come out and unravel at that stage, you know what I mean? But it was 2012 when I got closure on it. Well, like, you're talking 1980 when I brought it to the fore. 32 years. 32 years, you know. And that impacts. You know, and
100%.
People don't believe you. Like, you look at the institution of the family. So that's where kids should be most protected, feel safest, right? So outside of that, what is the next biggest institutions where you should feel safe? School, the education system. Outside of that, if something happens, maybe the church, like back in the day, they did do what they done and help people out and all, and they were to go to, you know what I mean, it was the church and the priest. Outside of that then is Garda Síochána, police, you know what I mean. So they're the three biggest institutions outside of the family institution where kids should feel safe. You know what I mean, and be able to go to these places in the knowledge that, you know, they will be compassionate and they will listen to you and they'll help to the best of their ability. But when them three are the ones you're fighting and don't believe you and sweep it under the carpet, you know, like I remember when we did bring it to the fore and they kind of charging it, looking mini minor aspects of it, and he didn't go to a normal court. What they done was they brought me out to the rugby club and something, and a judge was brought there and he was brought there and that's where he was dealt with, and he was given 6 weeks in John O'God's. It was down to the drink, he done a week in John O'God's, and they moved him from that church in Airfield to Donaghmede, 2 football pitches away from my house. You know, he used to drive around the area and tell me, you don't retract what you're saying, and you'll go into a home. He said, no, I'll make sure you go into a home, and You know, I have friends that are guards and teachers and all these, you know, I play golf with them and all. So with all this going on, when you're a kid and you don't know how to even verbalise that, or, you know, how to process it, you know what I mean, and realise that all this emotional stuff is kicking up in you, you know, it's hard, you know what I mean, it's hard, you know, and my own mother had her own mental health issues, and I'm being in a hospital for 6 and 9 months of time in St. Patrick's, and as I said, my dad's working 3 jobs and all, so the significant others aren't so significant in your life at that stage, you know, and you know, you're coming home, and my sister was only talking about what they had the other day to me, you know, just things that we would have seen as kids, like, you know what I mean, with my mum's mental health and stuff, so just all kind of impacts you, you know what I mean, and then if you haven't, as I said, got them institutions outside of the family, what are you left with? You're left with yourself, and you're left with defending yourself, or fending for yourself, you know.
And what you said about that priest, like, I grew up in that era, and I say stuff to me young friends like, what? It's like the priests at that time around the place, they were like gods. They could do and say, like, I would explain stuff like my uncle wouldn't understand about the industrial school up in Artane, and we got a great insight via my neighbour. He was up there investigating anyway, but talking about, they wouldn't understand, but they could literally come to your house and they could say and get the guards and go, his ma is in hospital and the dad's struggling here. All the way up to the 90s this was done. So, you know what? He would be better off if he get an education and that. They had the power to do that.
I had a priest, I remember one of our bad episodes, we took a bad priest, because this had been highlighted and all, so the parish priest, the head priest were in the parish, there was like 3 or 4 priests, it's not like that now. Yeah. But like, it used to be, say, like, in Ayres there was 3 priests, so there was a head priest, the parish priest, and then 2 others. And he came down to my house and told me, man, that they would say I was a neglected child. Yeah. Now, my man knew what that meant. Neglected child was, we could step in here, get the police step in and take you away. Yeah. So, not only was I like a kid trying to process that, my mum couldn't even process that and was terrified. Yeah. And there's only 17 years between me and my mum and dad. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know, you're talking about when I was 10, when this was brought out, my mum was 27, my dad was 27.
Still babies nowadays, you know what I mean? Babies, like,
the oldest daughter is 41 this year, she has no kids. Yes. You know what I mean? So you know, and back then the power that the church had, like even before that, you hear stories of people saying like, oh, we'll name you in the pulpit, we'll name you on the altar, you know what I mean? And people were terrified. The power that they had was unbelievable, you know, and it's that whole church and state and the constitution. And thank God now it's been dragged apart, because in 2012 we walked out of that court with the solicitor, and I turned around and I said to him, I know that report, the Ryan report, the Murray report and all that's coming out in a minute, but I said, it's only the tip of the iceberg. I said, because I know of at least 16 other kids in my area that were abused. And when it came out then about me and all, loads of them came to me. Loads came to me and asked about it, and since have gone, and it turns out now it was 41 in total. But when it all came out then, he was moved from Dunleary. Sinead O'Connor done a yoke in the paper years ago about our mate that had 2 or 3 kids in one of them homes out in Dunleary. He was the priest that done that and abused. He was moved to Ballyfermot. This is all come out now. Moved to Ballyfermot, done it again there, moved him to Evergreen. So they moved him there for the parish after 2 lots of incidents where he'd already done all this stuff, right? That was known. You know, there's loads that probably haven't come forward. So then they moved him from where I am to Donaghmede. And I brought that out in 1980. He wasn't defrocked until 1992. And he became a taxi man. They gave him a licence. You're putting, you know, paedophile and the rapist into a car. Do you know what I mean? Bringing people around there, and then it kind of started to come out, or 1991 I think it was, and when he was defrocked. So that had gone on in the 70s in 91, and the church and the schools just kept me. It was like your man there the other day, they got the sentence
Yes.
for the 23 kids.
Yeah.
I can't believe they moved him out of Terranure College into UCD.
Yeah.
That's fucking shocking.
Mm.
They're the most powerful institutions in any state.
Yeah.
Are covering this up and just moving them around like pawns. Oh yeah, saying nothing, you know. We moved them here and there. Why? Because they're middle class.
Yeah.
If you and me, my working class area, be all over the news and you'd be banged up.
Yeah.
You know, but they're giving them bail.
Yeah, yeah, and like I was talking to you before this, and friends of mine, my wife is from Coolock, and I've friends from middle class areas, and I've friends from working class areas, and if people think that your address, even nowadays, if they think that doesn't matter, wake the fuck up, like.
Yeah.
Because I'm from a middle class area. I get away with murder. People in my area got away with murder. Why? Because of our address. Different addresses, like, or also into this country, kind of when the new Irish coming in, they get lashed out of it as well. Do you know what I mean? They get any bit of criminality or whatever lashed out of it, minor offences, lashed out of it. So there's a two-tier system in this country, alive and well. Alive and well.
You know, I always say with the class, you know, you've upper class, middle class and lower class, you know. I think we've probably 4 or 5 classes because there's always another in society, and you see it then where, and it's probably because we're a colonial past, where we, even in working class areas, would castigate travellers as another class. You're looking at a 4th class, and now you have all this bleeding far right and fascism stuff coming out in Ireland now, and I can't believe it, and of friends that are knee deep in it as well, and that anti-foreigners. You know what I mean? So now you've another class. So now we're like 5 classes in a society. You know,
and I've no time for any of that.
No,
I've no time, because you see all that far right garbage, and what that is doing is it's separating. It's their fault. And what the higher classes were doing for years going, if only all them people in Coolock, and now we even have a programme on TV to show you who the scumbags are inside the K, and people tuning in. The reason why it's like that, it's their fault. Do you know what I mean? When you have people to look down on other people, they won't unite.
And I have to laugh at that, because media plays a massive part in that, and we have media in this country that's controlled by the 2 leading parties.
Yes.
And if you think any different, you know, your head's in the clouds.
State sponsored.
So you look at that for the. I had this around the Circle K as well, and people say, "Oh, it's great." I said, "It's not great." I said because it's highlighting 3 specific areas.
Yes.
I said, so now they're saying these areas are all bad, right? I said, now if you look at Talent, you have 90,000 people in Talent, which is the population of Limerick, right? You look at the stats for criminality, there's probably 2,000 out of 90,000. That means there's 88,000 people in Tala getting on with their lives and living pro-social lives. You know, you come down here, you've Coolock, Clonbarrick, Eadmore, Donaghmede, you know, Darndale, it all gets grouped into the one area, right? If you look at it, there's probably over 100,000 people, right? So what, you've little pockets in Coolock or Clonbarrick, you know what I mean? A lot of things, it's a gang culture, right? With families. There's a few families involved, even the few, you know what I mean? The 2 families, you know what I mean, with a few hanger-ons, you know. That's all it really is. Like this, I'd love to get into a taxi and say, take me to gangland. You should be fucking driving around for years looking for it. Where is gangland? You know, the media throws out this perception, so people have this thing like gangland. It's like going to Disneyland. Disneyland is an actual place where you can actually go into. Where's gangland? So I lived in Finglas for a while. And the road I lived on in the Sunday world, you call it Balaclava Drive. Right? But you're looking at probably 5 houses of 30, right? And then I think there's 2 houses over the other road, and down this road and this road, grand. So you're looking at probably, you know, 7 houses out of 60 that had people that were, you know, involved in criminality. But like Balaclava Drive. Imagine the other people living in that road, like 30 houses, and just because 4 houses, there's people that are doing whatever they're doing. You know what I mean? The whole place is castigated. You know what I mean? The whole road gets this, you know, stigma.
But inside the K, and it's taken me a while to break down this stuff. If you look at inside the K, and like RTE at the moment, it was losing money hand over fist, and now they've come up with a formula of what sells. You know, switch on the news, you'd nearly be roping yourself outside if you watch it. You think you're going to die, and you'd be going around with hazmat suits on you. So they know fear sells, and that's what they're selling. But it's your fault. It's not an ex-Taoiseach in this country awarding his best mate a 210, or giving his best mate information which led to him getting a £210 million contract. You know, it's the fella that's running into the shop with the gun, which I don't agree with either. No. Do you know what I mean? But it's his fault. But that's penny apples compared to what's really going on. Well, what's really going on. This country's being robbed with suits and fellas packing ballpoint pens. That's what's been happening years and years and years and years. But it's them fellas' fault over on that north side. Gangland, as you say, for not behaving.
I always say, if you want to judge society, have a look at its prison system. Have a look at its prison system. Like, I think it's 80% of prisoners in the prison system today, just over 4,000, are in for drug-related offences. Now, if you keep criminalising addiction, it's going to go up and up and up. It's not going to come down. The war on drugs has failed. Failed. Put the money into the services. I mean, I know with the first Rabbit report, you know what I mean, it was the first kind of paradigm shift in policy where the ministerial body were ministers that actually set and realised we need to work from the ground up, not from the top down. Because it's like having, you know, white middle class or upper class people talking about criminality or writing papers on criminality and have actually no experience of it on the ground.
Zero.
No. So,
from what they've learned from a book. No experience,
so,
no life experience.
You know, Rabbit realised that we need to open the ground up, and that was a result of Christy Burke and Tony Gregory. You know what I mean? Because they were vocal with this stuff, and the IRA and Sinn Féin and stuff like that, you know what I mean, and the concerned parents. So again, it was public power, you know what I mean, people power, you know what I mean, and they realised let's open the ground up, and they did, and it worked, and we got all the recovery services and day programs and stuff like that. But what was the first to be targeted when the recession hit? It was all them services. So you take them services away, you're leaving people with no choice, they've no education, and like I said, I'm not justifying what happened or what I done, but having no education, being on drugs, coming from a traumatic background or a broken home, what options have you got to survive when you need money? Because you won't live in the dole.
No.
And you won't live in the dole if, like a lot of people, a lot of addicts would have probably partners and kids. Do you know what I mean? You need money to survive, you know, and if you take these recovery services and you're targeting and you're taking money out of the mental health, or you're not putting into them year on year, you know, it falls down, you know. To give it some context, right, I think there's something like 25,000 registered addicts. We have 10 government detox beds in Kilmdarra, and then there's 2 emergency beds for pregnant women in there. Right, so we have 12 beds, right, government beds, and we have 10 in Bournemouth Hospital. We have 22 government detox beds, 25,000 registered addicts. Do the maths, you know, do the maths. And then they want to know why people are still involved in criminality and won't deal with their addiction and this moral, you know, model of approach. You just stop. You've a moral deficiency. Fuck off.
And then the system in this country, and I'm putting my middle class hat on because a friend of mine that grew up in our area, and he's struggling with a crack addiction at the moment. He's been struggling with a crack addiction and heroin problem for years. And his brother got money up to put him into a program. He's been in detox before. He's been in other programs. You know what I mean? He hasn't got the message, but he's been through a few of them. They have had the money to be able to do that. Back in your day, your family got together. Jesus, Wayne has a problem. Where are they going to come up with 10 grand? You know what I mean? So where are the beds? So the Irish government and our health service system in this country has failed, because if they're offering up a combined of 22 beds, they're not serious about it. And there's vested interests. Like I try and I don't want to lash anyone body over, but in this country, okay, so them 88% of prisoners, right, say tomorrow, here's all the trillions he is go. We've counsellors online, we decriminalise all drugs tomorrow, and people, we have services for addicts to use heroin safely. We've doctors, we've nurses, we have a rehab program, the psychotherapists, everything online. Now there's no more overtime. There's no more guard overtime. There's no more prison officers. There's no kickback from all down that. So that's the vested interests that sometimes, you know what I mean, through rose tinted glasses going, my Nixon's up here if this comes down the road.
Yeah, but like, having said that, you know, and I've heard that loads of times, and there is, you know, reality in that as well. But drugs and addiction and crime are more complex than that. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's okay bringing someone into a continual care process in a service, right? So you're going to need all the workers for them. But what you need meaningful training.
Yes.
You need meaningful employment.
Yeah.
You need housing.
Yeah.
You need proper mental health services. Right? Yeah. So there are other areas that will expand. Mm. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, like, so you're gonna get. There would still be work there for people. There would still be work to do. Like in the Netherlands and a couple of other countries, when the police catch you with drugs, they refer you to a health service.
Yes.
So it's not actually taken away from their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, so there is where they do refer and bring you to the health service. Yeah. It's the same here as catching someone and bringing them to court.
Yeah.
You're just replacing a more pro-social way of dealing with them. So I don't really think it would cut down on a lot of that stuff. And you're always going to have crime.
Yes.
And there'll be different types of crime. Right? So there'll always be need for guards. There'll always be need for, you know, security. There'll always be need for prison officers, you know. And they all have a job to do in society. And rightly so.
Yeah.
You know,
and
they need it.
I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying, oh, Jesus,
the
some
problem
people need to go to
is
prison.
they know the correlation there between crime, poverty, housing, you know, areas, you know, infrastructure. They know all this. So if they put the money into that, you're still going to need all them bodies to work. They're still going to have employment for that stuff, like, you know what I mean? If you put training in place for offenders, so you're still going to need, I mean, you could actually put more prison officers in that probably came through techs and are qualified in woodwork. You know, there's a program in the UK at the moment where the lads in the prison are trained by people that have their, you know, done their apprenticeships and things. So they go in and they teach them building work, plumbing, all that kind of stuff, and they do all the maintenance themselves within that prison. When they come out, they're actually job ready. So, you know, there is that as well. So there's always going to be ways and means, but the correlation is not there, and the correlation between the Department of Health and the Department of Justice is miles, is yards apart. Where if they realise that mental health and addiction, which is a mental health, kind of ends up in the Department of Justice. I mean, there was a study done there a while ago, I'm not naming the service where I work, but Air Service was like first on the list of people coming out of prison with mental health issues coming to our service.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be in prison in the first place,
Yeah.
but when they come out, then they come to us, and a lot of them end up back in prison for doing something that, you know, it's a mental health issue. You know what I mean? But our service was top of the list with the most people coming out with mental health issues. I'm talking about schizophrenia and stuff like that, you know. That says a lot.
And I was listening to news talk, it was a good few months ago, and they were talking about, it was in the Smithfield area, they were going to open up a clinic, and straight away, you have people ringing up, you know what I mean, going, and I think in order for us to, because as you said, and as I've looking around me, the war on drugs has failed miserably, like failed.
It's increased it.
Yes, we're criminalising people who need help. They don't need to be criminalised. But anyway, this clinic was open in Smithfield, and straight away the media are feeding into it, as is their job. You have, I walk my kids down by that place, and it's like, love, they're not going to be dragging your kids in and injecting them, do you know what I mean? And then you have another fella rings in and he goes, my wife needs chemotherapy, is are giving these bleeding X, Y and Z. And every now and again, I'm from Raheny, there's a place across here that looks after addicts, and you'd say some neighbours in my ma's would say, oh yeah, keep them over there because that's where they're from. Addicts are everywhere. They're in every street, in every postcode, in every area.
Addiction has no boundaries.
So we like to, it's like, I'm from over there, there's loads of addicts from my
classes.
Middle class, you know what I mean? And some of them are elderly and some of them are young, they're everywhere, you know what I mean? And I think until the politicians stop playing, because they're all terrified. So if you say, I'm going to do this and going to do that, the opposition come in and you're a politician, so you're pro-drugs, man, are you? And that's what they don't want.
I'll tell you what the problem is, right? And it's clear. Because it's not on their doorstep, they don't know, right? So, an example, they're talking about clinics and they put it out in the media and the SIFs, the safe injecting facilities and all the anti-that, right? Here's one for you. The methadone protocol, 1988, brought in the back door. Why? Because all these people were afraid of the HIV and the spike in crime. Right? So now HIV can spread and anyone can get it. I'm susceptible to that. So the politicians, let's sneak the methadone in, right? As a short-term solution. It's still going, right? So now we have a pandemic. And they shut everything down. Why? Because again, it's a virus that they can get. But because drugs and the gangs aren't hanging around their areas on their corners and they don't see it, they're grand, they're safe in that big walled houses. Like, I guarantee you, right, if a lot of people somehow moved into them areas or started using them areas or selling in them areas, they'd be quick to change their policies. That's the problem in this country. If it's not my door, I don't want to know about it. As a society, we all have a responsibility. As I said, if you want to judge society, have a look at the criminal justice system. Have a look at your mental health system. You know?
And Philly McMahon's programme, Philly's a friend of mine, and I speak to Philly like this as well. His programme on Portugal spoke about the decriminalising. Look at the benefits that they're getting in Portugal. They've decriminalised everything. You're picked up with whatever heroin, you're referred straight away to the Department of Health in that jurisdiction rather than the criminal justice system like here. My brother lives in Switzerland and they made loads of mistakes on their way. Needle Park was a bleeding disaster, and even down by the
Detroit.
And they made mistakes. And what I loved about, and you would never get that from a politician here, the Minister for Health, the leader of the country in Switzerland, she opened up a safe injecting centre directly across from where she lived. And she said, this is either going to go well or I'm going to lose my job. When would you ever see a politician in this country taking a leap like that? Never.
Really was their pensions and the 250 grand a year.
Never.
But
I'm getting annoyed. I'm going down a rabbit hole here of it mine, so I want to keep it positive.
But like that, Norway come out the other day and done it.
Yeah.
Decriminalisation of it, you know what I mean? So Portugal must have done it probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then, I suppose, and I listened to you before on a podcast and you were talking about like armed robbery and to get it organised. It's not just, you don't just run out with a gun and just has to be planned and done, you know what I mean? So when you've done, like, I've no experience of, when you do an armed robbery and you get all the stuff organised and was this the pre-mobile phone era or after mobile phone era that you got this done?
Before armed robbery was 15.
Okay.
So looking at 1985, 85,
right.
you know, no phones.
Oh, no.
And then say, you know, by 1990, I would have had the blocks. The big phone. I used to tell everyone I was a building contractor. Right? The phone, building contractor, you know. But my local office was the phone box on the end of the road.
Right.
And I had a way of just remembering numbers and stuff, you know what I mean? So I never had to have anything written down, or there was never anyone caught as, you know, from me having numbers or names, or I knew who owed me what amount, what they got, you know. I knew their phone numbers. It was just whatever way me had thought, like, you know. So like planning, this was like, I won't say where, but one particular place, a couple of us went, and we went camping across some place that we were looking at, and then we decided, you know, we'd go into the pub and we'd kind of engage with people, and there's a few girls there and we were planning, and so we found out through the jigs and the reels what day the unmarried mothers, as it was at the time, got their money, you know, what day it was and all. So we knew what day, you know, people got their labour there, so we knew what day the post office had the most money, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So things like that, you know what I mean, going camping, or, you know, going watching and thing places. The methods, the mechanism is the same today, but the methods are probably a bit different. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like today you can stick something onto someone's car or follow them, or, you know. Back then it was,
I'll just go on Instagram and look at them.
It was probably more skill to it. Back in the day, you know, and that's not to glorify it. I'm just saying, like, there was a bit more involved when you done it, and even guns and firepower back then, and getting them, and even a lot of people know I was very apt at cutting guns, sawn-offs. Like, there was a certain way of cutting them and stuff like that, and I used to pride myself that I was able to drill in through the handle without breaking it down so far and curving it and having a banana and a rope on it, and you under your jacket, and you want me unknown it now, and have the cutter at a certain angle and all, and even testing it, you put it into a tree, you know what I mean, in between a V of a tree and thing on it and pulling it, and so we got fairly skilled at that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean, and like that, I was always kind of the planner of the group, you know what I mean, like that's that hypervigilant and being aware of stuff and seeing stuff, and I've learned to put that into a positive manner where we can see gaps in services and in the literature, like a couple of publications out as well, and walking away now, another one just kind of done, someone else is working on it, and I'm back to college again, as I said, and actually trying to engage the tutor at the moment, the lecturer, in another piece that I want to do, you know what I mean, around trauma and desistance, you know what I mean, like the link between them. So I've learned to that planning and that seeing gaps and of twisting. So I've actually taken the niche that I have,
yeah,
and I put into, you know, pro-social values and stuff,
yeah,
you know what I mean, and spun it totally around.
yeah,
People always said, oh, you know, you're putting your story out there. And I said, there's method to my madness.
yeah,
I want people to know.
yeah,
I said, it's going to be on to society then, what way they judge me. I said, but if it can help someone, you know what I mean, if I can have that generativity and keep giving back to society, the society I took from for so long, you know, the pains and hurts I caused, I tried to give back. I can never, you know, make up or replace that kind of stuff that I done, you know what I mean, but I can, you know, help people going forward, you know what I mean. You know, I'm responsible for what I do today, you know what I mean, those are trying to help, you know what I mean, in the way I do it, you know, so.
And another friend of mine, I talk with her.
A lot of friends, haven't you?
You have a load of friends. Loads of friends. Another friend of mine, I had her on the podcast, Paula, and she talked about, you know, like, she served her time, her sentence started when she came out. Do you know what I mean? She done a couple of years, and she said, my real sentence happened. It was okay. I coped well in there. Do you know what I mean? She said, I done well in prison, but, and this is what I'm, after listening to you, her sentence started when she came out. Do you know what I mean? Just walking down the street, in there, what you think that they think, they're thinking about you. You know what I mean?
The thing is about that as well, and I get that, because when I came out of prison after one of the longer sentences, when I came home, I was walking into the house in the carpet, and anyone that's taken acid will know I was like, I thought it was on acid. I was a sponge, because I was used to concrete hard floors. The ceiling was coming into me, because I'm used to 3-4 stories. You know what I mean? Before there's a roof. You know, was used to getting emails at set times of the day, and I remember my mum asked what you want to eat. I don't know, whatever, you know. And then in my head was like, well, it's Friday, should be fish and chips, or fish fingers and chips today. Right, this is in my head. But I'm not wanting to say that out, because I'm like, in my house at the same time, I'm not really getting it, I'm not really there. And then my mum was like, so have a look in the fridge and see. I remember opening the freezer and just shutting it. I said, I'll have whatever. Couldn't make a fucking decision, because I was institutionalised at this stage, and I had to learn to deal with that, and it was harder for me to live as a normal Joe Soap on the outside than it was on the inside, because there was no bills, my meals were getting done, I knew what days I was getting stuff, I want that done in the prison for me. There was drugs or people selling for me in the prison or on the outside. I didn't have to worry about stuff. No responsibilities. You know, it was hard then when you come out and you have to do that what other people take for granted. And I remember I lost about a stone in weight in the first week I was out, because I couldn't eat, you know, I was stressing, my structure was gone. You know what I mean? No structure, you know. So yeah, it was hard. And then also, if you look at, say, the last time I was in prison was like 2005, right? I would say the charges were like 96, 97, 23 years ago or something. But will tell you, the last was 2005. If you don't take into account the years you spent in prison. So, how are you being rehabilitated? Right? If you're in prison for, say, 6, 10 years, whatever you're in prison for, but yet when you come out, your previous convictions start when you come out. Rather than when you go in. So it's saying that it's 15, 16 years since I've been in trouble, when it's actually probably 23 years. To get me. So if you're in prison and that's still being used against you when you come out, well then where's the rehabilitation piece in this? It's not there. You're still being criminalised. You know, it's mad. Like, I've seen people, you know, 30 years out of prison, you know what I mean, or 30 years when they went in, 30 years ago they went in, probably in for 15 years. A friend of mine, you know, a friend of mine as well, like, and like that, they're taking it from when you got out 15 years, so to them he's 15 years out criminality. He's actually 30 years because he was in prison for 15 years.
Rehabilitating.
You don't take that into account. You know what I mean? So, you know, until they start, you know, that kind of stuff, they can give you all, you can vote and stuff like that. It means nothing when you come out, you know what I mean? And then if society keeps holding it against you. Like that whole thing I speak about, you know, ban the boxing and the TED Talk. I've people and friends and services that had told me apply for another job. They've been that, or you've been put to the end because box 5, have you a criminal record?
Yeah.
Click yes. Box 6, if you have a criminal record, please elaborate. I'm not going to put down 54 convictions, you know what I mean? I'm going to put down the heaviest.
Yes. And
they're like, geez, you had this for publications, look at your CVs, work record, blah, blah, blah. Criminal convictions.
Yeah.
I've had some of the services come back to me. Services I applied, one service in particular, 3 or 4 jobs I applied for in it, nothing. And I actually got on to them. I was on feedback, you know what I mean? What was the this time, blah blah blah, and something around. Is it the criminality? Oh no, well we have. We went through this service.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Won't name them. We went through this service. Right? I started my whole detox and my recovery thing with this service, and they turned around and said to me, "Oh no, so we have 8% of people that come from your background."
Yeah.
I said 8%. Yeah. I said, so that means you've 92% that know fuck all.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just being smart because, you know, with 4, you know, job things with them and nothing. And one of the lads that got the job was a friend of mine, right? Younger, met him over the years, and I knew he's all the members of his family. He got the job, he had a diploma, level 7 diploma. I had a level 3, a level 5, a level 6, a level 7, level 8 honours, and a master's.
Yeah.
And they tried to tell me that, due to the high thing of the people that applied. And I says, why are you lying? I said, because such and such got the job. I said, and here's a diploma.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my record still, you know, impacts me. And kind of like where I work for a subsidiary of the probation service, that was my 58 application. And I said to my mate, I said, I'm going to apply for that, the crack. He said, man, fuck you. I got the job. And I remember my manager saying to me, Jesus, I don't know why, you know, you hadn't got a job, you hadn't been employed and all. I said, because I never got an interview.
Yeah. She
said, because you interview well. I said, I never got an interview.
You never got past that.
The first interview I got was for this job. And I know I became third on the panel, and then through the jigs and array, within 2 weeks, I was offered the job, and I took it, you know what I mean? They took a chance on me, you know. I just progressed from that, like, and the TED Talk then just opened up so many doors, you know what I mean?
You came out of prison, and this goes for all people. Like, the only thing we're guaranteed, and you're guaranteed and I'm guaranteed, is I'm going to fail. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make multiple mistakes. And if we judge people when they have come out of prison and rehabilitated, and as I was speaking about my friend earlier on, the shame then that comes up with that, and they're trying a door slam. Like, you are kind of, a lot of people would have said, like, 52 applications. Fuck this. I'm going back to do what I fucking, what I know. Do you know what I mean?
And that was in my head.
And a lot of people go, I'm going back to what I know, because I'm trying here, and fuck this. But you didn't. And I suppose it's a message trying to, like, people, like prisoners coming out, they're probably going to fail, and they're probably going to make a bollocks of the job, and they're probably going to stroke a bit of gear, but keep trying. I was listening to their phone fix place in the UK, and they take on ex-prisoners. And
some of them now are, you know, in management.
Yeah.
But your man realised when he done that, right, it failed kind of at the start, you know what I mean? They were robbing them and stuff. But he realised, he said, what is the problem? He said, there's something. So he realised the additional supports.
Yes.
The other supports. And I say it in my TED Talk, if you take them on, there is going to be
100%.
Right? But,
there's going to be ones from middle class staff that are going to do that as well.
I don't say that, but I've been jobs where, and I know people that are in jobs that, you know, take X, Y and Z.
Yeah.
No criminal records, don't come from, you know, any sort of working class background. You know, sure, they're politicians.
Human beings.
Yeah, you know, you see something, you take it, it's that reward system, it's there, we all have it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We all have it, you know, and then it's like, does the moral part of the brain kick in? You know what I mean? You drop 50 quid and I'm out behind you.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
God helps those who help themselves. Nice one.
Yeah, my dad always said, look after the pennies and the pounds, look after themselves.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so like, you know, there's always going to be that, you know, torn between, you know what I mean, but support and the services. So you may have someone coming in, and I remember me in my job, and I was in a team meeting. I was only newly in the job, and one of the others said, "Stay the fuck out, Wayne," or something like that. And I remember the manager saying, "No, I didn't react right." But it was that fight, flight or freeze, and I kind of froze. I was kind of middle, you know what I mean? I was, the body was telling you, you know, but I was saying nothing, and kind of re-traumatised me a bit. And I remember the manager saying to me, "I know you didn't say it," I said, "but your body language," she was like, yeah, and because like that, you know, what the fuck do you think I thought? You know, I'm not taking this shit, you know what I mean? But I was in a professional capacity, and thank God I was out that whole good, you know what I mean? The filter kind of kicked in, but the body language didn't, you know, and it was said to me, but like that, so that was happening in supervision when we walked through that, do you know what I mean? So that was a support, you know, so like that, some people might need it in a row where there's supervision needed. They might need supervision a bit more often than somebody else. You know, there could be other stuff going on with them at home or whatever, and it's like that. I always think that there should be some sort of like a welfare officer or, you know, a social worker in all kind of jobs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. In all kind of jobs, because you don't know who's coming in or what's going on with them. You can farm them out to, you know, psychologists or psychiatrists, and what do you think the benefits would be if you actually had someone in a role, because you have like family support workers in roles, you know what I mean, in services, which should be the same, because you can come and say, "Well, I'm stuck on at home, blah blah blah," you know what I mean. There can be an intervention, or there can be, you know, a three-way. Why can't you have that in a normal job? I mean, there's fellas going in at the building sites, and they're probably struggling at home, or their coke is rampant on the building sites at the moment. But if you had someone in a building site, you know, like connected to the building site in some form, that you could go and talk to them, and you knew it was private and it was confidential, and then they could support you into whatever you need. Like, there's so many things that could be done, and so easily done, to support people, everybody, not just ex-offenders. Maybe a little bit more support with ex-offenders, you know. There is ways and means of doing these things. People who say, like you kind of said at the start, was like that, "Oh, but, you know, we're going to lose jobs," and it will actually create more jobs. It actually would create more jobs. They might be in different areas, but, you know, we've seen it with the pandemic, where HSE workers have been farmed out to other areas. We've had social workers farmed out to other areas. Some probation officers have had to be farmed into other areas. So there is people with capacity and capability to do these roles in other areas. But if you haven't got enough, then you bring more through. Bring more through the education system. I mean, and that can be a farce as well. It can be a scene to be doing. I went through college, as you know, and I wanted to do my social work masters. It was 2 years, and there's 2 placements in it, because I wanted to be not a social worker but probation officer, try and help and affect lads, you know what I mean, like that, seeing gaps, and, you know, bringing it back to your own experience. What worked for me mightn't work for someone else, but at least I can try that avenue, do you know what I mean? And I have that experience that someone else may not have, and that's not to take away from them, because I think people get challenged by the lived experience, and I always say the lived experience should be just a tool in the box. You come in to build a house, you need a roofer, you need a brickie, you need a painter, you know, you need the glazer, you know, you need a plumber. We all work together. It's just, you can't just get the brickie in to build a house. You know, you need other people with other skill sets. So the lived experience should never challenge anyone. It should be just another tool to the box, right? So if you bring these people in and you do this stuff, but like that, I wanted to be a probation officer. The college let's say whether they couldn't or wouldn't place me. They said they couldn't reach out to the services to place me in because of the criminal record. So I'm at that stage. Why am I being brought through college through the route I came through, and the Susie grants, 30-40 grand pumped into me at the end to be told, oh, you can't actually do that.
Yeah.
So it's taken me out of society for 5 years, 6 years doing college, and at the end then they tell me, oh, you can't actually do that. You're on the social work path. The route is a social work path. But when you go to do the social work, you can't do the social work because you have a criminal record.
Yeah.
Know where you're coming from. So it's grand. We pump 30-40 grand into him, take him out of society for 4 or 5 years. You won't be involved in that, and hopefully you might get some union job at the end.
Yeah. It's not good.
No. Only for, you know, another part of the college stepped in and offered me a master's in criminology and criminal justice. But I wasn't leaving college without a master's. And I'll tell you why, because I look at it as back in the day, as we said, we started out with, you know, intercert or leaving cert, right? I needed leaving cert, got priority to pack shelves, right? Today, because society's progressed and a lot more people and the middle class and the upper class have more money while the working class have less, so there's a lot more people going to college. So degrees are 2 a penny now. Years ago it was massive to have a degree. Degrees are 2 a penny. Now it's masters. So now you've intercert and leaving cert. So time has changed. 30-40 years on, it's degree or masters. And I wasn't getting caught again in not having what I needed to get a job, to progress as a, you know, be a productive member of society. So I wasn't leaving college without masters. I didn't care what masters I was doing. It just happened that, you know, one school offered me a masters and I was going to do it, and then because of work I had done there, another one stepped in and said, you know, we're happy to offer you this one, and I took the one in University School of Law, the Master in Criminology and Criminal Justice. This is what I know. And
the life experience as well.
Yeah, well, it was. I got a thing there of a reference of the school, one of the tutors I had, one of the lecturers, and I was blown away. I actually got emotional and I was crying when I read it. The president gave you a job at this, you know what I mean? But what she said was true. But I still do have that fucking what's it called? The syndrome. You don't think you deserve stuff.
Ending.
No, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Right.
I shouldn't be here.
Yeah, right. And reading it, but what she said was true was around my publications, and she was always flabbergasted with how I could apply the theory to experience the practice. Where we have kids coming through school, and this happened to me in UCD as well, where one of the teachers called me up and he says, "Where did we go wrong here?" I says, "What do you mean?" I said, "That's my work." I was thinking I'm in trouble. It's the school again, you know, called up. He says, "No," he said, "you know, you got B's in your first two, or B minuses in your first two essays, you're steady. And this one," he said, you've an A plus." He said, "Would you give you more? I would have given you more." So where did we go wrong? I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "All the other students," he said, that were younger, he said, that were getting A minuses and A's. He said, "Our B pluses are all down, like in C minuses, D's." He said, "There's one I've actually had to try and get up to just a pass, like, you know what I mean?" And I said, "I'll tell you why." So it was a sociological thing, so it was to apply Bourdieu's thinking tools to a social phenomenon. Some of the kids applied it to twerking and mad stuff, I applied it to my life, right? And I applied the tools to my life, Bourdieu's thinking tools to my life. And I says, "I'll tell you where it's saying." I said, "You're given a lower grade for the application of the theory, the practice." I said, "Anyone can come through." I'm highly dyslexic. I said, "Anyone can come through, read a book, regurgitate it, paraphrase it, and put it out there, and great. You could be a great writer. Show me that in practice. Show me that in real life." I said, "So, you know, you're looking for UCD to stand over degrees and people going out." I said, "For me, the practical, the application, the theory to the application should be a higher grade, because you need to." It's grand having the theory. I mean, I could pick up something now and read something on plumbing, and I can regurgitate it to you. And I fucking grin and plumb. get the chance of winding the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not getting an electrician to do the plumbing.
Yeah. Now I and that life experience and the field, the area that you came from, and not the physical area, like as a person. I was talking with somebody in the car today about his young fella's dyspraxia, ADHD, school is a struggle. And he was taught that it was a lovely little conversation, and he was saying, John, do you know, I don't really give a fuck about the schooling and the results, and it's a fucking struggle. But he says he's in touch with the SNA all the time for the young fella, and he goes, and our old ways, and like you touched on it there, and it's the way I brought up, you're fucking leaving certain, that fella up the road, he's going to fucking college, and straight away you're getting freaked out because I wasn't going to college, or
someone else's achievements,
and you're in, and this fella referring to him about his young fella, he goes, I'm just going to fill him full of praise, full of love, and full of empowerment, happiness, and make him feel good. You know what I mean? The schooling, whatever, if he does it, but praise and listening to your story and listening to other people that I know struggle. The system and the way the system is built, that wasn't done.
No, you're funneled in.
That wasn't done.
You know what I mean?
You don't fit in that hole.
It's kind of saying in certain areas, back in the day, like it was kind of saying, well, that area is whatever, you know what I mean? So we're going to funnel them in this way anyway, and they're going to funnel you into being a road sweeper or being gardener or something, and I know all them jobs are world jobs and services. But if you keep funneling certain areas into that's all you're going to get. Like there was a whole thing there a while ago, cool, like Cabarrick and all, what do you want to be? A nail technician. Right, and now that has kind of exploded. But again, that was, they were funneling kids into that. But now them kids are doing that, and all these upper and middle class people actually need that service. Now, do you know what I mean? And they're on good money. Like you people going around, doing deliveries and driving and all. Bloke doing deliveries is more than Ryan. Taximan people, I believe taximan, you know what I mean? Taximan, I remember a lot of my family were taximan back in the day, and they could go out on a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and earn 1,000 quid, like, you know what I mean? And you're doing that 52 weeks a year, 52 grand wages. Today is still good money, but we need to stop separating people like that, you know what I mean, and boxing them off, because that's what happens, like, you know what I mean, they box them off. But again, if you think of that child that you're talking about, your own son has all that, right? But he's great with his hands, so he does lighting, rigging and sound technician, right? But skills, throwing out skills, all that kind of stuff, like that is on the spectrum as well. But he has a skill set that can be utilised, and like that, let them go through school or whatever. It's not the end all and be all, But this is where, when we go back to the technical skills, come in great. Because if you're great with your hands and you can do fucking woodwork or metal work or whatever it is, you know what I mean, technical drawing, whatever it is that they kind of focus on in them skills, like school I went to National Tech, right? So what they done was, when there was a row, so this job bring you down, there was a boxing ring in the thing underneath, and you put the gloves on and you get into the ring and you box the ring. How many boxers do you know over the years that have been great boxers have come from North East Inner City?
A lot.
Or Inner City, you know what I mean? Or them areas, even out around here, there was a lot of lads that were good boxers, like, you know what I mean? Probably didn't progress to being professional, but were very good boxers, you know what I mean? Over the years, and winning X, Y and Z and this, that and the other. My own little cousin at the mom in Lennon, had to give him a shout out there. Great little boxer, you know what I mean? I love it. I love to see it, you know what I mean? And he's winning everything. He's only young, but like that, he's from the North East Inner City. He mightn't progress good in school, but he has something. He has a skill set. Everybody has a skill set, and it's about finding that skill set. I mean, my skill set now is being able to work in the area I work and being able to write in the area I write in. You know what I mean? And that's a skill set that I'm not supposed to have, because the school told me I'd never amount to anything.
Yeah.
That person told me scribbling is a sign of a waster. You're going to end up in prison. I was all of them three things. I needed to change thinking. I needed to stop taking on board. I needed to empower myself. I needed to stop taking on board what other people were saying. I needed to stop judging myself on other people's achievements. Do you know what I mean? What have I got? What's about me? Because I lived in that poor victim, the poor me for a long, long time, you know, and by doing that I missed the who, the why, the where that I am. I missed the person that I was, or could have been. You know what I mean? And people saying to me, oh James, imagine what you could have been if you did. It's not about imagining what I could have been. What I am, where I am today, is what's important. It's not what I could have been. And like that, when I said in TED Talk, I wanted to either be, you know, I wanted to be a soldier, and I wanted to be an Irish history lecturer. So I ended up in an army that it's not legal, right? So I was somewhat a soldier, right?
Good with guns.
Yeah, and good with guns. And a crack shot as well.
Hopper.
So, and then, you know, I want to be an Irish history lecturer. I'm not an Irish history lecturer, but I've given lectures on Irish assistance in an Irish context, you know what I mean, from my own lived experience. So I mirrored what I wanted to do, do you know what I mean, in different ways, you know, and like that, I only got an email there off UCD the other day, of Deirdre Healy. I've done the TED Talk as well. That was mad how Deirdre's even did the TED Talk, got asked. There was no, we didn't know until I walked in and Deirdre was there, and she had been my lecturer on the Masters, and that's the girl who gave me the reference. And she had an email the other day, because I was in college last week. I was in college the other week and the week before. And what's on the reading list? My 2 publications and my TED Talk.
Daily.
So I was emailing and I was telling her, and she goes, that's funny, she said, because we're actually doing your inside job article here tomorrow, she said, and for the last 2-3 years, she said, your 2 articles are the ones that get the best and most response from our students, because it's Irish, it's lived experience, you've come through UCD and you've done the masters that these are doing, so they're like great, deadly, you know what I mean, so it's impacting on them. And she asked me if and when we went back to face-to-face, will you come in as a guest lecturer? Now, I know I've lectured up for, you know, for Shad Maroon and stuff up in Queens and that, and over in Cambridge and all, which is massive, you know what I mean? But to go back to where the college I came through, that's going to be the crown of glory for me. You know what I mean? That's really going to be the crown of glory. I even went through a phase where I was going to take a photo of my masters and post it to my school that told me I'd end up as a waster. Stop, man. Stop.
That's the primitive, the ego brain going, fuck you.
Stop.
No. Stop. That's the old way, you know what I mean? The old way of getting back. We don't behave like that anymore. No, it was great talking to you, Wayne, you know, and there's a good few people that listen to this, you know, and I know a load of people, and some of them, you know, they can go, like us all, they can go left or right, you know what I mean, and hopefully that this spurs people on, that everyone is good enough, and ex-prisoners, Wayne is testament to take a chance. And he might let you down, take another chance, and give him another chance.
Like 57 of them.
Do you know what I mean? Take chances.
68.
Take chances. Yeah, take chances.
It's about perseverance and knowing your worth. You know, it really is about perseverance. It's about knowing your worth, perseverance, and talking. Tell someone what's going on. Find that one person that you can talk to. Do you know what I mean? And you just don't. You hear that a problem half is a problem shared. You know, I can't emphasise enough how, since I've come into recovery, the biggest tool I've had is my mouth. It's not me fists. It's not me mad bleeding, you know, mad head that'll plan something mad and, you know, thinking you're going to be Pablo Escobar and you're more like bleeding Pablo Crossbar, you know, in your own head, you know, your own. It's like I always explain it as, do you ever see the film The Mean Machine? You know,
yes.
The original one is years ago, right? And then there's the English one, right?
Yeah.
So Jason Stanton's in goal, the mad Scottish fella, and he's like this, and he's mental. And the ball's coming in, next to all, he's breaking up the prison officers, you know what I mean? He's saving the ball. And then the shot comes back to him, he's still just standing like this. This fucking war story and movies going on in his head, it's not actually happening.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's what it's like, you know what I mean? There's a difference between, you know, being the lead role in your own movie to reality. And it's trying to separate that and realising, wait, here, hold on. People say play the tape forward, I play the tape back. I don't need to play it forward. I need to play the tape back, rewind to where I was, you know, because it's a real case of who I was, who I am, and the piece that a lot of people miss, especially in recovery, who I still can be. That's where I need that balance that we were talking about earlier, do you know what I mean, between the emotional and the mental. You know?
And that's, you talk about that victim mindset, like, victim in any area, whether you're struggling with drugs, alcohol, or just struggling in your job, in your relationship, in your life, victims don't recover.
No, it's a mindset, and you stay in it. You know, even people say, oh, you're a survivor of sexual abuse and addiction, this, that, and the other. I don't even take it that I'm a survivor. Do you know what I mean? I'm living. I'm living today. I'm not surviving. I'm not a victim. I'm not surviving, I'm living, I'm progressing. I'm in progress. It's what I say, I'm in progress, I'm living today. I'm not a survivor, I'm not a victim. And thank God for the step work, the 12-step fellowship, because like that, the 4th and 5th step, I was able to let go of that victim, the poor me. Because it was everyone else's fault. When I came into recovery force, all I was short of them was writing to the Minister of Justice and asked for a card that says, I deserve, you know, I deserve 50% off, or a 5-finger, you know, free, you know, mental stuff, like, you know what I mean, and coming out of that mindset and realising, like, the rape and abuse and all that kind of stuff, and what society done to me, the education system and the guards and the church. I needed to let that go. That's not my stuff. That wasn't my stuff, but I used that over years. I held on to it. You know what I mean? It was, oh, well, this blanket around me, look what happened to me now. That blanket's gone. Do you know what I mean? What you see today is what I wear, it's what I choose to wear. That blanket is gone. You know, so I was able to let that go. But at the same time, I need to take ownership of my own shit. I need to take ownership of what I done and what was mine. What I did do. Regardless whether it was on drugs or stuff, I still needed to do that. And I'm not suggesting this for people out there that have gone through it, but for me, I had to forgive the abuser. I actually forgave him. You know, he's dead now, he died in prison.
Right.
But I forgave him, and I've forgiven, you know, the system. You know what I mean? It's like areas, there's bad people in the system, doesn't mean the entire system is bad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's, people get caught in that. Like that guard, like, he listened to me. Like, one of the catalysts of me, you know, changing was the probation officer. He said to me, what happened to you? I said, what? He said, what happened to you? I said, do you really want to know? Because it was always, why did you do that, or what did you do, and what are you up to? He asked me what happened to me. That was my first experience with that in the criminal justice system and all them institutions. No one ever actually asked me what happened to me. And he listened to me, and I felt he listened to me, because he was able to give, it's like that motivation interview, he was able to give me stuff back even the following time when I met him 2 weeks later. And he trusted me and he empowered me, and he helped me go on to other stuff, and got me linked in with Northside Partnership, and girl up there, Sarah, very good Sarah, and it was the LIT program, Labour Market Inclusion program, and it's all one-to-one stuff. So you hadn't got that fucked upness of sitting in a class with people. It was done one-to-one because they're coming from that way, you know. And he got me on that. And when I went and done my masters and all, they had me refunded for the probation service, like, you know what I mean. But was that what happened to you? And it's mad because I was only saying to college there a while ago, and Porcelain was in there, one of the videos that we listen to, and there's TED Talk as well, and the girl says, it's this whole thing of asking what happened to you. I was like, fucking hell, this fella done that years ago, when there was no theory around it and all. Which was probably the bit of compassion, and I use it with the lads I work with. I don't say, what happened to you? And stuff goes off the rails. I say, what happened to you? I don't say what happened, or what did you do, or what the fuck, or I ask them what happened to you. So I mean, because it stops people in their track. Yeah. Especially coming from that background, you know, it stops them in their track, because actually, so they're thinking, or, you know what, you actually ask me what happened to me, I'm like, yeah. You know, and then sometimes I will know when to share my own stuff with someone when it helps. There's other times you wouldn't and don't. Yeah. You know what I mean? But there's times then when you know what I mean. If you're open to it or you come to it, trauma is very visible. It's like if you're a mechanic, you'll know there's something wrong with the car. Yeah. That's why you bring a mechanic with you when you're going to buy a second-hand car. So it's the same with and that's lived experience. The mechanic's lived experience. You know what I mean? If it's a roofer and there's a leak, he'll know where the problem is. The flashing is leaking or something. You mightn't getting up looking at it and mightn't have a bleeding clue, like, you know what I mean? But like that, with the lived experience of trauma and stuff like that, you will recognise it in people. You know what I mean? You'll recognise it.
We're going to end it. We're ending at that. That was powerful, Wayne.
Cheers,
thanks a million. Wayne is on Twitter.
Yeah.
Check out Wayne on Twitter. Not on Instagram or anything.
I'm on Instagram now. I was set up years ago, like, they were not tech at all. Someone set me up years ago, and I was on it there recently.
Sound.
So I'm on Instagram.
What is it, Wayne? On Instagram, what's the handle?
Wayne365, I think it is. Because I've done a podcast there for Core Youth Services. Okay. So
I've seen that one, yeah. Check that one out as well.
So I was on that, and then on Twitter, I was on that because I was doing a podcast for the Suicidal Man. Another good one.
That's I listened to that. That's what I heard. You were talking about a place I used to go. I was like, I have to get Wayne on the podcast. The Asylum.
Stop, yeah.
Who did you like, DJ Pressure or Ed Case? My favourite was DJ Pressure.
Ed Case in the place. Come on, Dublin, let's raise the bass to the place.
Anybody I know that went there, they're either dead, right? Anybody I know there are either dead, or the ones I know are they're real profound. They fucking start doing better with those. They're either in the ground or fucking have their shit together. There's no in betweens. And the floor or the ceiling was real low. There was no eyebrows done or anything in them days. It was no fake tan on the fellas.
Pair of red jeans and a bleeding leather waistcoat, like something now of one of the LGBT clubs in San Francisco. I was looking at those the other day. Here's the madness. I'd be in the sort of, pitch black, you know what I mean, just lights. And I had this picture there, and I've black sunglasses on in a nightclub, right? Black nightclub, a black beret, right? Black bleeding beret, right? I won't tell you where that was from, right? And a black leather waistcoat and red jeans.
The early 90s was full in Dublin. That was a mad old shop, that place. But anyway,
the right name in it.
The Asylum. If you know, you know. And victims don't recover.
No.
Victims don't recover.
People who progress do.
Yes.
Lift the labels.
Yeah.
Too many fucking labels.
Yeah. Nice one, Wayne.
Alright, cheers. Thanks. Alright, thanks.
How long we waffling there?